Hello, and in this video I'm going to speak about learning and socializing in the community of practices, challenges and opportunities. First, let me start by saying that we must discuss first, and we must first, at the first thing, to raise the question why we need to learn in the communities instead of learning by ourselves alone. And indeed, when you do alone everything, of course, you are confident in your learning, you can manage better your learning process and so on. And everything is dependent on you, on your efforts, on your intensity of learning, on your motivation of learning and so on. And when you go into community, and when you appear in community, of course, communities consist of a lot of members, and all the learning process then becomes much more complicated, because a lot of individuals meet each other and they are starting to communicate and collaborate. And this the type of communication and collaboration is quite fuzzy, because different participants have different motivations, different interests, different backgrounds, and suddenly they appear together and start discussing on different issue in the community. So learning in the communities is much more fuzzy, it's much more complicated, and it's much more difficult to evaluate, to manage, to facilitate, because a lot of things should be taken into account. Learning in communities or working in communities is much more complicated, because you must acknowledge the human nature issues, human factors, and so on. So when learning starts in the communities, so it's much more complicated when it comes to the learning process, when it comes to the learning results. This is very important to consider the challenges and opportunities of learning in the communities. Of course, learning in the communities could be challenging, because different kind of participants have different interests, different motivations, different professional background. That's why the communication and collaboration in communities should always be very well managed and facilitated. Mostly facilitators or managers who have tried to facilitate or try to manage the discussions and collaboration in the community of practice, most of them have noticed that the main problem in the community of practice, usually talking about the online community of practice, that participants of community of practice are not very active and are not very much reflective and responsive. So the facilitators and managers of the community of practice always must take into account, when they're starting collaboration and cooperation and communication in the community of practice, they must motivate somehow participants to be involved into the discussion, to be involved into the problem solving, or to be involved into the certain forum. So attracting members to the community of practice is really very important, because lack of participation is the major issues in the community of practice. People usually don't have not all the people have sufficient time to be in the community and even to participate into the particular events or forums in the community. So motivating, attracting participants to community is very important thing. Other very important things, that even when community members already in the discussion, when they are already in the forums, not all of them are very clear in their communication. It can be expressed in very different kinds of communicational issues, like not very clear request, not very clear response, not very sophisticated explanations, not very reflective explanations in the problem, in the issue, in the requests. That's why a facilitator of community or manager of the community always should try to clarify the issue, clarify the problem, clarify the discussion, clarify the note, and give the best solutions for communication between different kinds of participants in the community of practice. So making the discussions in the community of practice and making the communication in the community of practice more structural, more ethical, more clear, to maintain certain clarity for the learning purposes. That's the main task of the community of practice facilitator. Facilitator should be able to facilitate discussion and to facilitate communication and collaboration in the community of practice. In order, the community of practice will serve as a learning, as an educational tool for all the community of practice members. So when a particular community member raises the question or raises the problem or raises the issue, the facilitator should be able to attract more community members that are specialized in the particular field. The facilitator should be mediate between different kinds of participants in the community of practice, and facilitators should be clarify and summarize the best solutions proposed by the community of practice members, delivering a very short but efficient reflection file in the forums of the community of practice. Also, facilitators should be able the facilitators should be able themselves be able to be very proactive in the community of practice. Facilitators are the most proactive members in the community of practice that should be able to initiate different educational events, initiate different educational forums, demonstrations, live streams, even online workshops. So facilitators are really very important participants of community of practice. And if facilitator is really very efficient, he can attract very interesting and very competent members in the community of practice. Facilitators can initiate discussion, they can initiate collaboration and communication in the community of practice, and facilitators could organize themselves very different and interesting educational events for the members of community of practice. So challenges, summarizing, the challenges are mostly connected to attracting community members and making them more collaborative and communicative, and opportunities, of course, appears when successful facilitator is devoted to the community and he brings the best solutions in order community will be more vibrant and more orientated towards community's goals.